Have you ever wondered why dieting feels so hard? Not just that it's inconvenient and annoying, but weirdly hard. Almost like the entire world is set up to make you lose. Well, because the truth is, in a lot of ways it is. And I'm not saying personal responsibility is dead. That still matters. And I'm not saying weight loss is impossible. I've done it myself. What I am saying, though, is that millions of people are blaming themselves for losing a fight that they never fully understood. Your diet isn't happening in some clean, neutral environment. It's happening in a world absolutely flooded with ultra processed food that is cheap, hyper palatable, insanely easy to overeat, always available, and constantly shoved in your face. It's at the store, at work, in your car, on your phone, and inside your own kitchen. So when the diet fails, most people make it personal. They think to themselves, I'm lazy, I have no willpower, or I just need to try harder. That explanation is way too shallow. If you're trying to diet and live healthier, you're not just fighting hunger. You're in a constant fight against an entire system engineered to wear you down. Not all at once, but over time, quietly, every single day. And listen, I know exactly how it feels. There are certain foods that are completely banned from coming into my house. Gummy bears and chocolate chip cookies are two of my biggest weaknesses, because the second they're in the cabinet, the fight has already started. And it's not some huge dramatic battle, it's just a little bit of pressure sitting in the background all day long. Then life hits. You have a hard night's sleep. You get stressed out, have a bad day at work, you have just one weak moment. And then suddenly you failed. But did you actually fail? Or did you keep building an environment that made failure more likely and then blame yourself when it worked? And that's what this video is all about, because if you think this is only about motivation, you're fighting the wrong enemy. Once you see the scale of the problem, dieting finally starts to make sense. And honestly, it's bigger than I could ever cover in one video. In the US, the CDC reported that in between August 2021 and August 2023, about 55% of all calories came from ultra processed foods. For kids and teens, that number was even higher. So this isn't the occasional junk food problem anymore. This is now the default food environment. And most dieting advice still pretends you're still making decisions in some calm, neutral world. But you're not. You're making food decisions in a world where some of the most profitable food companies on earth, backed by some of the world's smartest people, have stacked the odds against you. And the strongest proof we have for this is brutal. One of the most important studies on this comes right out of the NIH. Researchers brought adults into a tightly controlled inpatient setting and put them on two diets, one ultra processed and one unprocessed. The diets are matched for key things like protein, fat, carbs, sugar, sodium, fiber, and energy density. But they could still eat as much as they wanted. And that's where it gets interesting. Because on the ultra processed diet, they ate about 508 more calories per day. They ended up gaining weight on the processed phase and losing it on the unprocessed phase. Now, this is a huge clue that when food is built a certain way, people don't just like it more. They tend to eat more of it without even planning to. Now, this doesn't erase personal responsibility, though, but it absolutely changes the conversation. And this continues getting worse. The problem isn't just that processed food exists, but a huge amount of it is engineered to be unusually easy to keep eating. A 2019 paper gave hyper-palatable food a real definition. They based it on combos of fat, sugar, refined carbs, and sodium, and they ran it against a major US food database. The findings? About 62% of all foods met the criteria. These foods are not just tasty, they are scientifically built to keep pulling you back in. And even the texture is part of that design. The softness, the way it feels in your mouth, and how easily it goes down. It all helps you eat faster. And the faster you eat, the easier it is to outrun fullness before your body catches up. And food doesn't need to be magical to beat you. It just needs to be rewarding, easy to eat, and sitting there waiting for the moment your willpower slips. And then you stack portion size on top of all that. A meta-analysis of randomized controlled feeding trials found that larger portion sizes were linked to consuming about 295 extra calories per day. And the USDA's 2025 Dietary Guidelines Evidence Review reached basically the same conclusion. In adults, serving larger portions increased food and energy intake. And here's what makes that worse. The USDA review also concluded the portion size and energy density have independent and additive effects on intake. So if the food is calorie dense and the portion is oversized, you're getting hit from both directions. Again, this is not about weakness. It's about an environment that quietly pushes your intake higher when bigger servings become normal. And bigger servings have become normal. Research on the US fast food offerings found that from 1986 to 2016, entree portions grew by about 13 grams per decade, and dessert portions grew by about 24 grams per decade, while calories and sodium climbed as well. And an older but heavily cited review also found marketplace portions began growing in the 1970s, rose sharply in the 1980s, and kept climbing after that. So now let's zoom out a bit. You've got food engineered to be hyper palatable. You've got food ridiculously easy to eat fast. You've got portions that have been inflated for decades. You've got constant availability. And you've got companies spending billions to keep all of it visible, convenient, and normal. So, of course, dieting feels hard. You're trying to eat better inside a system optimized for convenience, reward, repeat consumption, and in many ways, it's built against your health. And this is where most people get completely stuck. They keep trying to solve an environment problem with motivation alone. That's a terrible strategy. Motivation is unstable and discipline is real, but it's not infinite. Even the most locked in people get wore down. And that's how a lot of diets actually die. Not in some dramatic blaze, in a perfectly predictable moment of human weakness. The trap isn't the first craving, the trap is the 10th one. It's not the first day, it's the bad day. It's the poor sleep, stress, an argument, one late night when your guard drops and the food is right there waiting. And if you think the food industry doesn't understand exactly how this works, you're giving them way too much credit. A 2020 analysis of Coca Cola emails found evidence the company tried to shape public health messaging through the Global Energy Balance Network, while backing academics who pushed a very industry friendly idea. The real problem was mostly inactivity and energy balance, not sugary drinks. In plain English, that means keep the focus on the person, not the product. Make it sound like the issue is mostly that you're not moving enough, not that companies are selling products people can drink in minutes and overconsume constantly. And that matters because once the conversation gets framed that way, the pressure shifts onto you. If you gain weight, if your diet fails, if your health starts slipping, the story becomes you just didn't try hard enough, you didn't exercise enough, or you didn't have enough discipline. And that framing is incredibly convenient for the company selling the product. And this is not some weird one off example. A 2016 analysis in JAMA Internal Medicine found that the Sugar Research Foundation didn't just fund research in the 1960s. According to the authors, it helped select the papers, shape the review's direction, and it backed a narrative that downplayed sugar's possible role in heart disease while pushing more blame onto fat and cholesterol. This industry has a long history of trying to shape the story in ways that protect the product. So when I say the system is stacked against you, I do not just mean the food itself. I mean the way the conversation around the food has been shaped for decades. Sell the product, downplay the downside, shift the blame somewhere else, and repeat. But then you have the marketing machine itself. A 2022 JAMA Pediatrics meta analysis found food marketing was associated with increased intake, choice preference, and purchase requests in children and adolescents. That means marketing is not just background noise. Exposure changes behavior. It changes what kids want, what they ask for, and what they eat. And the scale of that marketing is not small. The FTC reported that food and beverage companies spent about $1.8 billion in marketing to children and teens in 2009. And while traditional TV spending dropped, spending on digital, mobile, and viral marketing rose. So this is no longer just a couple cartoon cereal commercials from the 1990s. This became packaging, promotions, online games, social campaigns, branded content, and constant digital exposure. Meaning wherever your kids spend time, this marketing is usually not far behind. It's on the screen, on the shelf, on the box, in the app, and in the culture, shaping what looks fun, what looks normal, and what starts getting asked for by name. And that matters because a lot of people like to imagine their food choices are happening in some calm, rational setting. But again, they're not. They're happening in a world where products are deliberately built to feel rewarding, then surrounded with cues designed to keep them stuck in your head. It's the candy at the checkout when your decision making is already weaker. It's the snack placed right at eye level. It's the bright packaging, the cartoon on the box, the celebrity or influencer attached to the product, and the repetition of seeing it so often that it stops feeling like advertising and just starts feeling normal. And when you zoom out, the point becomes obvious. This is not just about food itself, it's about the cues, the branding, the normalization, and the constant pressure to consume, followed by the constant message that if you lose, it must be your fault. This is why I call it your diet versus the world, because that's exactly what it is. You're not just fighting hunger, you're fighting convenience, stress, poor sleep, oversized portions, and a system that keeps stacking the deck against you at exactly the wrong moments. And if you keep looking at all that and just keep saying, I just need to want it more, you're missing the real lesson. The lesson is not that you're helpless. The lesson is that the system is designed to chip away at your willpower constantly. And if willpower is the only tool you've got, you're going to have a much harder time at this. So, if the system is built this way, how do you actually fight back? Well, first, stop turning this into a morality issue. You're not a bad person because certain foods are hard for you to control. You're not weak because some products beat you more easily than others, and you are definitely not magically above biology just because you know better. If certain foods reliably take you down, then listen to that pattern. You do not need daily access to the exact foods that keep wrecking your progress. That's not freedom, that's just a bad strategy. So start there. Remove the foods that get you most often. Not forever if you don't want to, but long enough to stop keeping your biggest temptations within arm's reach. Then make the better choice easier. Build your routine around foods that actually fill you up and do not drag you into a constant fight. Protein, fruit, potatoes, rice, oats, yogurt, eggs, meat, beans. Simple meals you can repeat without needing a pep talk every time you open the fridge. Because that's how you start winning this, by making the better choice more automatic and the worst choice less available. And stop making your hardest decisions at your weakest moments. Do not wait till you're exhausted, stressed, starving, irritated, underslept, and emotionally wore down to figure out what you're going to eat. That is exactly when the environment wins. That is when the app looks better. That is when the cravings get louder. And for me, that is usually when I start to convince myself I should just order a pizza. The lesson here is not that you're helpless. The lesson is that the system is designed to wear down your willpower constantly. And if willpower is the only tool you've got, you're making this way harder than it needs to be. Willpower matters, of course it does, but it works a whole lot better when it has backup. When your house is set up better, when your defaults are cleaner, when your meals are simpler, and when your worst food triggers are not sitting there waiting for a bad night. That is the move. Not to be stronger, but to be smarter. Because the real win is not becoming a better victim of temptation. The real win is making temptation work harder to get you. So if your diet failed again, that's fine. But ask a better question. Did you actually fail? Or did you keep trying to out willpower a system designed to chip away at you all day, every day, and then blame yourself when it finally worked? Those are not the same thing. Stop blaming yourself for losing a fight you set up badly. Change the setup and what comes into your house. Change what stays within reach and what becomes automatic. And change what gets the easy lane in your life. Because your diet never stood a chance in the world you were handing it. But your next one might if you finally stop fighting the wrong enemy. Drop a comment. What's one trigger food you're kicking out of your house this week? And if you want to live longer and feel better doing it, follow for more.